All right, we are recording for Chapter 9 of Empire Strikes Back. Not too many notes here. One is we finally meet the Emperor. Of course, it is just his hologram, but it is still, we hear his first words in the stories. Um, it is, that scene is a little different than what, is in the movie. In the movie, you have Vader, walk up and then he kneels down, thing that activates the hologram. Here, it's no, he's standing in the room, even shaking, because he is so afraid of the Emperor, which I don't completely feel is right, but I can come back to that. This he's saying that once a hologram appears, then he bows very far, and when the Emperor tells him that he may, he then, stands back up. But he keeps his face looking down at his boots, so he doesn't look at the Emperor. He even describes uh, the two as being like a priest before his god. So, yeah, definitely setting up who's in power here. And it's interesting to compare that to how Yoda's presented. Because, master and apprentice in both situations, with obviously Yoda's apprentice being Luke there. And the Emperor is, even before he's there, Vader's intimidated. Whereas before Luke realized who Yoda was, didn't really take him seriously. And even after, I mean, yeah, he takes him seriously, he does have respect for him, but he's not intimidated by him. It's like there's a mutual respect. But yeah, and going back to what I said about how you can come back to, I don't think Vader's quite right here. That at least in the movie, in the movies, he isn't presented as being that kind of afraid of the Emperor. He knows the Emperor is his master, yes, and he does treat him appropriately, treat him with that kind of respect, but he's not quivering. I mean, it is. I'm just trying to think of the best way to put it. I don't like how Vader's been treated in this book so far, because there's him calling the rebels scum earlier. I mean, it's just he is being made more common in a way, and it's like, I mean, you don't want to do that. You want to keep him intimidating, but also make it clear he is servile to the Emperor. He is the Emperor's servant, and the Emperor even refers to him as that. It's like, you do that because that builds up the Emperor. Here, I feel like Vader's been kicked down a notch from where he was before, which makes the Emperor less intimidating as well. And it's different authors, so maybe it's just they have different takes on Vader, but yeah. So is that yeah, and there's also, I did kind of mention that Vader even avoids eye contact with the hologram of the Emperor. But again, it's Yoda is quite different from that. So yeah, that's likely intentional, though I'm not sure if you could say that there's a perfect mapping back and forth to really give you a sense of how different these two are. But it is still clear how different they are. Now continuing with this, to a degree, because, it's Vader and the Emperor talking, and the reason why the Emperor wants to talk to Vader is because there's been a great disturbance in the Force. This is in the movie, and it's like, yes, I felt it as well, and it's the son of Skywalker, that whole thing. And it's like, okay, yeah, makes sense that these two would be concerned, but reading it made me think, what is this disturbance in the Force that they're referring to? I mean, I get, oh, it's something about Luke. Okay. But what? What has he done that would produce a disturbance in the Force? Nothing of late. I mean, is it just his existence? Because if that's the case, then they would have been feeling that years prior. Like, even just at the Battle of Yavin, you'd think that they would have felt it. But they didn't. It's again the whole, the time gap between those two stories is such a problem that they're just totally ignoring. And is like, if it were Luke is actually achieving things in his training with Yoda, that would be different, because then it's like they're sensing that. But it's also a great disturbance in the Force, and they don't have a direction to it. They don't have a sense of where it is, because technically, since the Falcon couldn't go into hyperspace to escape Hoth, they're still near Hoth, which means they should also still be near Dagobah. So it's like, it is kind of funny. It occurred to me while reading this, like, if they had any sense of where this was, Luke and Yoda are dead, because they just have to go over there shoot down onto the planet, and there's nothing they can do. Um, yeah, kind of a problem there. But it is also, I'm saying, what is this disturbance? Is it just Luke's existence? But then it's well, they should have felt that earlier. And even if it was, even if you want to say, oh, well, no, it wasn't until he was an adult. It wasn't until Battle of Yavin and he started waking. It's like, okay, then this should have happened in those 3 years. Like, it doesn't make sense that suddenly now, because it's not, and this is like my final point, the timeline makes no sense in this chapter. And not as in, I'm confused, well, a little bit confused, but there's just no coherence to it. That's what its problem is that I do not know how much time is passing. It's like you have Luke's training that it does refer to him getting in better condition. Well, that would take days, not hours. So days for Luke must have passed. But there's no indication so much time has passed anywhere else. Vader potentially, because it's like he's had the meeting with the Emperor, and it's like, had the whole, he's been told to kill Skywalker, but it's like, or we could turn him. And it's like, I don't remember what the Emperor says, but Vader's like, he will join us or die. And then the end of that conversation. And then next thing you have with Vader is he's brought in the bounty hunters, who are there. So a signal was sent out to bring them in, so that potentially was days passing. But again, we're not told, we don't know, and we got nothing on the Falcon crew. I was like, they've been repairing the ship, but they've been doing it in relative peace, so hours may have only passed. There's no indication that days have passed there, none at all. And also, it even want to see if I can know a little bit earlier than that. Yeah, so it just how it talks about Leia is in the cockpit of the Falcon, and how her face is being softly lit by the various lights there. Deep in thought, she ran her hand along the control panel in front of her. She knew something was churning up within her, but wasn't certain that she was willing to acknowledge it. And yet, could she deny it? So more of that, how they are building up, she is falling in love with Han, or at least coming to realize it. Which I do like. As I've said before, I like that. So, but again, there's nothing here suggesting it has been days that they've been on the Falcon. Especially not that, because we had them kissing in the previous chapter. I would think this reaction of hers would be not long after, like, hours after, not she's already gone to sleep, woken up, potentially multiple times even, and now she's doing, unless something else happened, but you're not telling us that, so I can't assume that is the case. It's yeah. There was something else when I was looking through this. The way the discovery that they're in the space slug is a little different. It's not significant though, but it is a little different. More of a like Han suspecting exactly what it was. And he doesn't just shoot down at the ground. He actually shoots at a Minoc in the distance after he's inspected the ground, being like, this is off. And it's like, once it hits and things start going, it's like, oh no, I know what's going on. Everybody on the Falcon. I don't like one thing that they did here. So as they're escaping, this is in the movie as well, the whole, they have to bank the Falcon to get through because of how the teeth are closing. It was an impossible maneuver, but Chewbacca responded immediately. Once again, accomplished the impossible. It's like, the ship is designed to do that. I mean, did he do it quickly? I mean, it's not an impressive feat. I'm sorry, for what they're describing here, the ship exactly has the capability to do that. And they're not setting up as though it had to be that fast. And it was very apparent that as they soared out of this giant mouth, those teeth were beginning to close. I mean, there's no indication of a threat, of a danger, such that, oh, we gotta do it right now. It's in fact, it's not even implied that they need to do it. And they're not setting up what the size of the teeth are either, because it's not unreasonable that, it's closing like this. The ship going this way, it's not unreasonable, would escape. I mean, unless it is that, the teeth are so large that there is the time that they can be like this before it's completely closed, and you need to sneak through there. You're not setting that up, so it's just like, oh, see this impressive thing they did. You're not setting up that it's impressive at all. So, but yeah, going back to the main thing here is I have no sense of time. I have no sense of time in this chapter. Um, I mean, it have days passed for Luke. It's very reasonable that they have. In fact, even in the movie, you see, his clothing has changed. If nothing else, he's taken off some layers. But it is also he has worked. He has developed. That's not just hours. That's days. We don't know about time passing clearly for Vader. Potentially some because calling in the bounty hunters, but we don't know how much. And it makes no sense with the Falcon that any time has passed. But the chapter ends with we have them because they've left the asteroid, and now the Avenger, the Star Destroyer, is able to pick them up. So next chapter we're going to have the whole maneuver where he anchors onto a ship, onto one of the Death Stars, Star Destroyers, so that they don't pick him up. Which is really silly, but I mean, you should have sensors that would pick something up like that. We do also have Luke trying to and failing to get the X-Wing out, and then Yoda doing it and succeeding. And I'm still annoyed by some of the language, and I mentioned this earlier when Luke was pulling the lightsaber out of the snow and ice. So this is just like Luke accounting for what is doing the mental accounting of what has just happened with Yoda moving it. But he knew that it was a potent example of Jedi mastery over the Force. It's like, it shouldn't be over. That's the wrong word there. It should be with. It should be with the Force. Because as I said before, the way it was set up in A New Hope, and other ways it's been set up, the Force, the Jedi works with it. It flows through them. And Yoda does describe it, being everywhere and being through them and within them and between them and all that. So the idea of mastery over the Force is, again, a dominance that is not, that's not how flowing with the Force is. So that does bother me. It does make me wonder a little bit why it is like that. That could just be the author writing it that way and maybe not understanding that it should be more of a flowing with the Force, a mastery with the Force. And I get how that may seem odd, mastery with the Force, but it does mesh better, especially with the whole having a distinction between Jedi and Sith, that the Sith dominate the Force. They take control of it, they grip it, and they wield it. While the Jedi, as I was saying, they flow with it. They apply it, but the Force is also applying to them. So it's more of a balance. And I shouldn't really use balance here, because the other implications there. But it is together. The Jedi work with the Force. The Force works with the Jedi. The Sith use the Force. The Force doesn't necessarily use the Sith, at least as far as the Sith is aware. So that is, in my opinion, the incorrect word, but I should go off on that. But as I said, it could, that legitimately is something that could be the author not fully getting it. And also it could be my interpretations wrong, but I'm going to go with my interpretations right for the moment. I mean, just it does make sense based on how things were described in A New Hope, and also the Force does generally seem to have a Zen-like description to it. So, yeah, I mean, it makes far more sense to treat it that way, and that's how it's supposed to be used, than another way. So, but that would be kind of one of those things where, because the book is being written by a different author, the screen based on the screenplay by Lucas, so Lucas at least provided notes, but written by somebody else. So that means that they're the ones that are putting the words down. So you do risk having things incorrect between them. Like also how Vader is presented so differently. That's not necessarily just an author deciding to change certain aspects of a character as they develop further, going into additional stories, which absolutely happens. I'm trying to remember, have I done that? Not in Failure and The Children Many Gifts. The characters are consistent, or at least it is reasonable because of the years that pass between how they have changed. And in case of the one character who changed quite a bit, that's even talked about in the book. It's like, why? What triggered that change? So that makes sense. I think I did retcon some of the technology, though, in the Catherineverse books. Those are not direct sequels, though, that they're just stories set within the Catherineverse, so which may make it worse. But it is still, I think I have retconned some stuff there. I have made some changes there. That was definitely because I'm developing it further. Here, though, completely different author, so you have different notes, different thoughts on things, so it's not necessarily surprising, but that doesn't make it less disappointing. Yeah. And one other thing that I will also add that I do think is... okay. So it will be interesting to see how this ends up being tackled in the rest of this book. I have no idea how it might be touched in Return of the Jedi, because again, different author. Luke closed his eyes. So this is Luke's attempt to raise the X-Wing. Luke closed his eyes. He tried to envision the contours, the shape, to feel the weight of his X-Wing fighter, and he concentrated on the movement it would make as it rose from the murky waters, and then as he concentrated, it began to actually come up. This is one of those things where the Zen-like view would... And I guess maybe saying the mastery over the Force makes sense, because that's Luke's understanding, which is wrong, which is flawed. Perhaps flawed is the better way to put it. That he thinks it is, I need to completely envision it to pick it up and move it. But that means he's also thinking in terms of, like, the weight of it. But Yoda's point would be, no, the weight is irrelevant. The Force is able to do this. You simply must use the Force, work with the Force to do so. And that's it. There's no more to it than that. So by Luke concentrating so much on all these other points of it, and even, like, the movement it would have to make, Yoda is, in theory, just thinking about it being there, and therefore the Force moves it. And also kind of goes back when Luke was pulling the lightsaber out, he was envisioning it in his hand. He wasn't envisioning it on the path between. So maybe it can be defended that way. The mastery over the Force, that is, Luke is incorrect here. But then you have to actually have a payoff for that later, where somebody does explain to him, or he comes to that realization. The thing is, especially because a different author between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, you'd need to do that here, and I'm not sure how you can. Unless, well, I guess the Cave of Evil thing, potentially there, but I kind of doubt it, because that's less about how the Force works and more about the emotions of the Jedi. And that you must have control over them, lest you fall prey to them, and then the dark side controls you. Which I guess actually, because, with the whole Zen thing and it flowing, if you go to the dark side, that's evil, that's selfish, so then the Force would flow through you and take on that color, I guess would be a way to put it. And you would see it then as well, you need to control your emotions, so you need to dominate something within yourself that really you should be trying to accept about yourself. Like, even if it is that you are very angry, like, the whole Luke hates Vader for various reasons. Could be, you killed my father. My name is Luke Skywalker, you killed my father, prepare to die, kind of thing. I mean, I actually just watched Princess Bride not that long ago, so. But it could be, something like that. But because he can't forgive him for that, he can't move past that call to revenge. It's so coloring stuff that, he's obsessing over. And what happens, in The Princess Bride, once Inigo does get his revenge, he doesn't know what to do next. And that is a common, I don't even want to say it's a trope. It is a trope in stories, but it is also true. You focus so much on that, and it isn't healthy, and isn't good. So when it's achieved, you're now just potentially shriveled up with this hatred because you don't know how to live without the hate anymore. So I could see that making sense then, because then it's so colored, and you're viewing it as you need to be in control, because that's also in some ways an aspect of vengeance. You expressing control, you expressing dominance over the person that you're getting the vengeance on, as opposed to letting it go, and maybe still achieving justice, but it isn't about you anymore. It isn't about you being in control. It's about that being served. So in some ways, it does make sense that you would have the dark side like that, but it is more of the Force is kind of neutral there. You're coloring it. But it then does explain why a Sith would view it as you need to dominate the Force, because they're trying to dominate something within themselves. They just don't necessarily understand that, so that they don't understand it, what's going on either. Whereas a Jedi should be more at peace with themselves, make it easier for them to wield the Force without that color there. Yeah. Don't know. I mean, it does make some sense to me. I just don't know if that's necessarily accurate today. And it is. I'm like definitely headcanoning right now. But I mean, I think that's at least a serviceable idea. It'll be more interesting to see in Return of the Jedi then, since Luke, at least my understanding from the movie, in my interpretation, my headcanon there, is the aspect of him having to choose between good and evil, and him achieving that. I mean, it's like he already has the Force, but it's basically, well, which way are you going to go? So will we see it there, that kind of stuff there or not? It's hard to say, since different author entirely, so hard to know what to expect. But well, we'll get there and we'll see. All right, that has been enough. Let me see. Next is obviously chapter 10, because this was 9. That's 5 more chapters: 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So yeah, should be fun. And yeah, I am gonna look forward a little bit. I'm just curious if. Okay, yes, I just moved forward a little bit, and no, the Jedi Master Code. So we want to do anger is what you feel, but I feel the Force. I have a feeling that the Cave of Evil is in the next chapter, so that will be interesting to see. Especially if they do set anything up that Vader may have found them, and is actually that, like, Luke thinking that maybe he is actually there. Because in theory, you could do something like that, but I have my doubts about it. We shall see. All right. See you next time.